Welcome to the second day of Autumn Fair. I hope that you're all having a super time, learning something from all these wonderful exhibitors. For the next hour, we're going to spend some time with British manufacturers. They're all members of Made in Britain. I'll introduce them all in a second. And we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into a very important subject of sustainability. I know that's a very big word. It's a long word. And it's an urgent question to address for all businesses. And I hope that in the next 45 minutes we can explore that theme properly with our guests. And we will all learn something about how this subject is going to be addressed for businesses and how you can turn your sustainability into a business advantage. My name is John Pearce. I'm the Chief Executive at Made in Britain. Just very briefly on Made in Britain, we're a non-profit group. We represent 1,900 different manufacturers across 50 different sectors, so we cover pretty much anything that you can think of that's a physical thing you can put in a box. We've got somebody that makes it at Made in Britain. As I say, we're a non-profit organization, and what we do, what our purpose is, if you like, is to bring together these manufacturers under the use of a very interesting little design mark. So the mark that you probably can't see on my lapel, but you will have seen it on the back of a Vauxhall Vivaro van or on the products of our members. And we use that mark for the members to help them to sell more of what they make. It's a wonderful system, and it works very well, and we're growing all the time. But that's more than enough about Made in Britain. I'm delighted to introduce our guests. We'll start at the end. Susanne, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the business that you run.
Hi, I'm Susanne Langley. I'm here representing Cheska Gifts. We are a UK manufacturer of notebooks and other small travel items, and we've been making in the UK during our whole history, but over the last 10 years, we've really had a massive push to reshore our production to make as much as we can in the UK. So now more than 60% of what we do is UK made, and a massive push to sustainability, so looking for recyclable materials. So for example, our notebooks, you have a choice of sustainably sourced paper from managed forests, but also recycled paper. We look for recycled materials, and we're also looking at the whole life cycle of the product. So what can we use that can be recycled at the end of life or can be reused at the end of life? It's a journey, and it's one that we will continue ongoing as things improve and more materials become available.
Thanks very much. Joe, tell us a little bit about your new business and yourself.
Right, so my name is Joe Brady. I'm the founder and owner of Essence of Hartland, based on the North Devon coast. I started my home fragrance business 3 years ago. I collaborate a lot with local artisans and makers and artists to try and keep everything as local as possible. I also collaborate with other members of Made in Britain for some of my packaging to ensure that it's sustainable, recyclable, and reusable. It's quite difficult for a small business to try and be as eco as possible, which can, make you think a bit more creatively about what you create and how you sell it.
Fantastic. Now, Made in Britain stretches all the way up to Scotland. Alanna, tell us a little bit about your business and what you make and what you do.
Hi there, my name's Alanna Dale. I'm the founder of a company called Lazy Pheasant. We are luxury homeware and accessories, and some of them are on the table here. We use mainly wool fabrics because of its sustainability. The company was started back in 2018, and everything from when we started was looking at sustainability, so looking at our packaging, looking at our materials to make sure everything we were doing was as sustainable as possible. So that's basically the start of Lazy Pheasant, and we're looking to improve on everything we're doing, always looking for improvements as things change in the industry.
Fabulous. I think, before we get into the discussion, it's worth sort of noting that sustainability obviously is an enormous topic for everyone. It's all a topic for us all personally as well as professionally. But there has to be a starting point, and we know that the demand for sustainable goods is out there and that it's increasing and that consumers are asking more sustainability questions, and buyers and specifiers are asking far deeper questions about your business and how and why your product is as sustainable as you claim it is. I want to start at the beginning and go back to, we have 3 businesses here that are at different points in their life cycle, if you like. I'll start with you, Susanne. Where does sustainability start at your business, and when did you, dare I say it, when did you think, well, we've got to take this seriously? What was that moment for you?
I think it's a demand-led thing, and also your own personal beliefs. So I think if many of us are thinking about the next generation, the climate change, the planet, and sustainability means very different things to different people. So you have to, as a business, we had to understand, what did sustainable mean to us? And it doesn't just mean using a recycled material or that something is recycled. It's about the whole ethos of our business. So it's looking at what our impacts are from our manufacturing. It's looking at our energy use and minimizing it. We use 100% renewable energy. We look at our waste stream, and we've managed to minimize our waste. Now, less than 6% of all of our manufacturing waste goes to landfill. So it's either recycled, reused by ourselves, or we manage to dispose of it in a reuse way rather than a landfill way. And then right through to the product. So how can we use an alternative? And going back in history, PUs, which were leatherettes that you might use on a travel wallet, a folder, a notebook, were a replacement for PVC, which was a leather alternative that would basically in landfill almost never biodegrade or decompose. Then that was replaced by PUs, which were better. But again, they take a long time to decompose. So now we're using recycled papers. We're using rPET, which are plastic bottles. Rather than the plastic bottle going to landfill, we use that to weave into material that we can then make beautiful notebooks, folders, travel items out of. And then we look at end of life. So how can our items be high quality? How can they be reusable? Or how can they be recycled? So I've got a notebook that is 100% recycled and 100% recyclable. That's our ultimate goal. It's not always achievable at the moment, but as I say, sustainability is a journey that you have to just chip away at.
And Joe, your business is brand new in lots of ways. So you're, dare I say it for you, but sustainability has never been an option for you. You started on day one and thought, oh, well, this has to be a sustainable business because of the environment it's being set up in.
Yes, so for me, I've always been interested in the type of products that I make. It's why I created the business in the first place. One of the things I have found very challenging is sourcing materials that is A, made in the UK, and 2, it has an ethical life cycle to it. It's also eco, and also that is affordable. One of the things that I found challenging when starting the business is trying to find the right materials that I could afford that then could be retailed at a reasonable price that is affordable to the end consumer, but then also giving that message to the end consumer that they are purchasing something that has been thought very carefully about in terms of it being eco. So hence some of the packaging I use is compostable. So this, for example, is starch rather than plastic. It still serves the same purpose as plastic would, but you can then put it in the compost afterwards. So it's just having little components, I guess, to enhance my products that says to the end consumer that this is something that's been thought carefully about. And when you talk about the end of the green life cycle, can be put into general waste or into your compost. I'm hoping that adds a bit more, how can we put it, a bit more, can't think of the word. I keep losing my words.
Permanence, maybe.
Yeah, or just something that's a bit more special. It's not something that's just off a supermarket shelf that you then just throw in the bin. It's something that you actually think about when you're using it. So in my candles as well, it's a little collaboration I do with a paper maker in Devon, who makes these UK paper seeded dust covers for my candles, which you can then grow something with. So it's almost kind of educating people on how to reuse the product once it's been used. So it's not just once, it's twice,
And
so on.
you're setting up a new list of suppliers for your products. You work with multiple different suppliers. Have you found there is that's easier to do than you expected, or have there been some challenges to finding suppliers that are geographically close to where you're based?
A lot of it has been word of mouth, or luckily for me, because I do a lot of events around the Southwest, I get to meet other makers, but also suppliers. So, for example, the essential oils that I use in all of my products are all sourced from Somerset. So, in terms of the carbon footprint, shall we say, of the journey from, the supplier to where I live, to where I make it, and then the waste that's produced from it is very minimal. A lot of the packaging I use, anything that comes, we all receive things from Amazon that's full of, shredded paper or what have you. All of that I reuse.
Other delivery services are available.
Yes, they are. Sorry. But they, rather than throwing all of that in the bin, I can reuse it. And it's also cost effective for me as a small business. It's very expensive to buy nice packaging that you shove in a box to put the product in to keep it safe so that when it gets kicked around on its journey, it doesn't break. A lot of that is then reused by the end consumer, hopefully. It's something that I've mentioned on my website about all of my postage and boxes that I use.
And Alanna, you're a sustainability specialist. Can I say that? You are, before you said, of the company, and so the company has sustainability at its very core.
Absolutely. So before I started Lazy Pheasant, I worked as an environmental manager for a coal company. That's a kind of oxymoron, but yeah. So being an environmental manager, this stuff is second nature. So when I started the business, it was at the forefront that this is what I wanted to create. So I was looking at every aspect, from the material, the packaging, where can I get it, is it sustainable, and looking at the company's ethics. It was really difficult, actually, right at the start. That was 4 years ago. There wasn't that many packaging companies that were promoting recyclability. One of the companies I did find were Tiny Box Company, and that started on the back of the lady who founded it, Rachel Watkin. She was a jeweller, and she actually couldn't find recyclable boxes, so she started the company. So we've used those from day one, which are the boxes here. So they are made from recycled cardboard, and you can recycle them. The one thing I found actually is using bubble wrap. So with these boxes, you want to send them out in pristine condition. So I looked at using different types of wrapping, but trying to get bubble wrap that's compostable, it didn't look great. So we've had our challenges, and we're constantly trying to improve what we do.
I want to move on to the topic of people. We talk about sustainability as being a hot topic within the company, but stakeholder engagement across all the different suppliers and the buyers and the people that work for you is really important. Susanne, how do you employ? You can tell us how many people you employ in a second, but how do you turn the idea, the sort of journey of sustainability into a message that works both inside the company but also outside to all the different people that are involved in your company, either buying your product or supplying you?
Well, we have a team of about 40 people producing in the UK in our factory in Northamptonshire, but our stakeholdership is much bigger than that. So if you imagine my clients, you're a massive stakeholder in what I do. Your clients, so why do they want to buy a product with a sustainability story? Are we even communicating that? And communicating why something is sustainable all the way down the line is really important. So that's the story. That's the story of why you selected it as a gift, why that person's going to buy it from you. And even beyond that, so we're producing in the UK, we're prominent in our local community. Our staff really enjoy the fact that they're making product in the UK, that they see that product go out of the door, and that they're making it in a sustainable way as well. And then beyond that, we give back. So we give back to our local community by supporting local charities, but also we partner with a charity called Tree Aid. Now, planting trees has been a bit of a everyone's doing it kind of story at the moment. We chose trees because we make a lot of notebooks and we use a lot of paper, and paper is very much associated with cutting down trees. But we partner with Tree Aid, who work in Africa, and their whole ethos is about a sustainable future for poverty-driven communities. So they plant a tree that then creates fruit. That fruit sustains that community. So all the way through our communication with our clients, with our staff, it's all about how we can do what we do, make a living, because at the end of the day, we all need to make a profit.
Absolutely. That's why we're all here.
In the most sustainable way. And if you think our audiences are getting younger and younger, if you look at the marketeers in the marketplace, most of them are just out of university. The importance of the climate and sustainability to them often is one of their key buying decisions. And therefore, I think the journey and how we communicate it, all of us on everything we do, is going to be one of the most key factors in our businesses as we move forward.
And Alanna, you sell directly to customers. Do you, as I know some businesses are doing now, considering their customers as part of the team, because you're learning from your customers what they want, but you're also interacting with them around what the future of your product might be, and when they come back to you to ask for another one or to recommend your product to someone else, are you finding that that's a normal these days, the new normal almost?
Yeah, they want something sustainable. They want something that still feels good and is quality. Especially with the products I use, it's wool, so it's got a good feel, it's sustainable, and it's got longevity. It's not fast fashion, and I think we've all seen those images of fast fashion on beaches and so on, and people don't want that. Those images, negative images, connotations, people don't want to see them. So for me, it's getting the right materials. You're wanting something that lasts, something that's tactile, and the brand is luxury, so you want it. It's expensive, so you want it to last.
Yeah, and longevity, of course, is something now that people are asking. You know, how long will this thing that I've purchased last? How long will it be with me? And what do I do with it when it gets to the end of its life? Joe, have you found that social value is part of your business planning? Are you getting asked questions about not just the product itself, but the people that are buying it, and the network of people that are involved in your business?
I do, because I don't make every single aspect of my product. So that's why I call upon experts in other fields that I collaborate with. So, for example, artists, ceramicists, for accessories, that sort of thing. So I do get asked a lot about, well, where does that come from, and how does that fit together, and what's the story behind that? So to me, that's very important for me as a small business, and also to help explain what my brand is. But also the life cycle of the product is important as well. So when I've mentioned, about the outer wrapping is compostable, but also the actual candle or the actual paper that's there can also be reused for other purposes. I also do other products where you can come back and refill. So with like diffusers, that sort of thing. All of my products are refillable, and I thought that was very important, and it's a very important message to send out to the end consumer, but also to retailers as well, that it's not just a one-off throw in the bin. And to ensure that things are reused and recyclable, I try and make that process and that journey as easy as possible. So it's either by revisiting one of the retailers that I stock, or by post. So it's just making it accessible and making that journey easier for people.
And I hope you found some of your relationships through the Made in Britain network, because we have lots of members that are doing packaging of some kind or another. I want to move on to the subject of packaging, because we've all heard that. I mean, if we rewind a couple of years ago, let's say 3 years ago, before the pandemic, and you talked about single-use plastic. These days you can barely mention that phrase and not be held to account. I want to touch on this subject of packaging because it's a really difficult one. We were talking just before we came on stage about the challenges of having packaging, because you need packaging. But if you've got your product in a retail environment, you've got to communicate something on the packaging. Susanne, I know it's an enormous topic, but what are your thoughts about, let's say, the future of packaging in the gift and accessories sector? Because the future will be made by us. We will decide how it goes based on the demand. But what are your feelings about what that future might look like for businesses that will all be addressing the same questions? How do I reduce the amount of packaging? How do I change the end consumer's relationship with waste packaging? Let's put it like that.
I think that, I mean, I don't know whether you're finding it yourselves, but we're finding there's a definite drive from the consumer back up to say they don't want an awful lot of packaging. They want their packaging to be meaningful. So why is the packaging there? Has it got a purpose? Is it essential to have that packaging to protect the item? Because if it isn't, and it is literally just going into the bin, or can you reuse the packaging? So if you've got a beautiful box, a lot of people will keep that box and they will use it. But if it's not beautiful and you can't reuse it and you can't recycle it, do you need it? I think from a retail presence, you need more packaging sometimes to sell the item, for it to be unique on the stand. And also you might need to tell a story about the product. What is the point of having a recyclable product if we can't communicate in some way how the client can refill it, how the client can recycle it, why it is sustainable, where it was made, what it's made from? The challenge is working with your retailer, with your client, with the end user to say, okay, what message do you need your packaging to tell, and what purpose do you need your packaging? What kind of protection does it need? What kind of retail branding does it need? Or does it need labeling? Does it need a barcode? What can go on the product? What can only go on the packaging? And then working with them to make sure that that packaging fits their brief and that it also talks to their end client, I think.
You've taught me something now, because I've never heard the term before, meaningful packaging. But maybe somebody in the audience has. But just to let you all know, we will have some time at the end for questions. So if you've got questions about members of Made in Britain and their products, or questions about Made in Britain in general, save them up. And when we have some time at the end for questions and some interaction with you all. This is a question to Alanna or Joe, but any radical, meaningful packaging ideas that you've had? What's the most meaningful packaging you've had, Alanna?
I think that's a great term, meaningful packaging.
I
really do.
I'm writing that one down later.
Like Susanne said, I mean, the boxes we use, we hope that people would reuse them because they're high quality, with our logo on them, and people can then use them afterwards. Likewise, we use, craft paper around the kind of belly bands, they call them, but it's got information about the brand in the back. So meaningful packaging. The other thing, when we started out in 2018, it was plastic mailers. So when we were sending things out to customer, it was plastic mailers, and that was just the norm, and they were cheap. However, you'll see in your Amazon packages and so on, again, there's other
There are other delivery companies around. Yeah.
Everything comes in paper mailers now, so we have actually changed over to paper mailers. My concern was that these are wool, and sending them out in paper mailers, they wouldn't be protected. However, I have to say they're fantastic. I've got one here, and the durability of them are just fantastic. So these are what we use now, and I wouldn't look back at the plastic mailers.
Yeah. Joe, any radical, meaningful packaging from your
Unfortunately, I don't
business?
have an example, but the diffuser boxes that I have printed, so all my printing is done 20 minutes from where I live. And I work very closely with the printers to make sure that the paper, for example, so this is scented paper, and it's a special kind of paper that absorbs liquid and doesn't spoil the ink, but it's also paper that can be reused for wrapping gifts.
Okay.
So you can use it as, re-gifting, and it's also a kind of paper that does biodegrade very quickly. It's not got any plastic coating on it or anything like that. So that was something that was important to discuss collaboratively with the printers. And when you work with local suppliers like that. It makes it a lot easier rather than use international printers that are easily found online. The boxes that they come in are meaningful, otherwise that would just get torn and get ruined. The same with the diffuser boxes that contains reads, the bottle, and the information about the product that's inside. And also for safety information, it's also a legal requirement to have that on the packaging. Something you probably can't do if you just posted a glass votive. I lost a few customers last year because I refused to put my room sprays and pillow sprays in boxes. They wanted to gift to family and friends of something that was made in Devon, and they wanted the box to say made in Devon. And I explained that it is mentioned on the label that's already on the glass bottle, that they didn't need another box to present that to them. And they didn't quite understand the reason behind it. And I suppose packaging that isn't needed costs more money for you as a business, but also it's a waste of time and it's a wasted product at the end of the day to the end consumer, who would then just throw that box in the bin because the information is already on the bottle.
There's also the extra shipping. The more packaging you have, the shipping from like your supplier to you, but also from you to your end user or on your shelf. A small store, massive packaging. Shelf space is very valuable in a small gift shop right through to a massive supermarket. It's important on so many different levels.
Yeah. I paused a little bit there, Joe, because you said I lost a customer last year, which is in this kind of room is it's like a punch in the stomach. But I do want to move the conversation on a little bit to the future, which will be decided by the future of this sector and the future of the economy, if you like, will be decided by the decisions that we make and the language that we use around sustainability and affordability and profitability. But I want to start with Susanne, if I can, and talk about how you're seeing stakeholder engagement changing, and whether you think, this is a difficult question, but I know you can all cope with it, but whether you think the mood music from buyers and specifiers, are they coming with us, and are they moving as fast as the consumer demand? Because we know that real people, ourselves included, are concerned about all of the topics that are making us act in this way. Are the specifiers and the buyers, are they with us on this? And is the next sort of year, 2 years, 3 years, is that going to be a positive one from the supplier-buyer point of view? What are you feeling at the moment as we start to re-emerge and come back to a more normal economy than we had a couple of years ago?
We also work in the business-to-business space, and I think the demand there has come much more quickly from a corporate point of view. There's a lot of ruling from government now about what packaging declarations there have to be, net zero. So on a business level, buyers are very much, sustainability is one of their core requirements. I think from a consumer point of view, you're seeing that coming through more and more. Consumers are actively now looking for brands who've got a sustainable message. You're seeing it throughout the fashion sector massively. And I think that on all sectors now, as net zero comes forward, it's in the news, plastic packaging. You've only got to watch, the Discovery Channel for a few minutes, and people are taking this really seriously. And I think we have to. Climate change is now you look at Pakistan and what they're going through at the moment. So I don't think any of us can ignore sustainability. We've got to all decide where it sits in our own businesses and then find a way to engage and then equally respond to what our consumers need. And I think as our consumers demand it, we basically will not have any choice.
Yeah. And can I put you in the optimistic bucket?
I think it's an amazing challenge. The best part of my business is the fact that we manufacture in the UK. that I have a choice about the materials I use because I make it. So as I make it, I can choose whether I make it out of, so one of my notebooks there, it's made out of waste coffee cups. It's the post-industrial waste, so when they chop out a coffee cup, it's kind of that shape. There's massive waste, and that's now a notebook. That didn't go to landfill. It didn't go to be recycled. You can only recycle paper about 6 or 7 times. So it's not infinite. So if you can make something else out of it. And when my staff make that notebook and they brand it with something beautiful and I see that going out the door, there's nothing more pleasurable than seeing a beautiful box with one of our Made in Britain stickers stuck to it, which we've recently done.
And that could almost come with a carbon footprint identifier on it as well.
Yeah.
Of course, because if you're buying something that is made at your factory in the UK, then we know there is a lesser carbon footprint of that product than if it were being brought in from another country.
And you can beat yourself up about all the things you can't do. I wish I could be perfect. None of us in our businesses can be perfect all of the time from a sustainability point of view. But it's sometimes the very small things that you change incrementally that make the biggest impact. So just as at home, we've all started to recycle, and once it was like nobody did it, and now who doesn't do it? So it's kind of a gradual seismic shift, isn't it? That if we all make that very small impact together, then overall everyone kind of, the wave continues. And I think it's a massively positive thing to be able to do as a business and makes you feel really good.
Yeah, that's really, really lovely to hear at a time when, we know there are multiple different crises, including economic crises and inflation that we have to look at. But Alanna, can you add to the optimistic tone about your feelings for your business? Because you're a relative startup and a realist, but are you also a qualified optimist?
Absolutely. You've got to be optimistic. No, we've made changes to our products. Our rugby ball cushions here, we've changed from, they were hollow fibre fillings, but now we have recycled bottles that are now filling them. Also, we are going to go on a bit of a journey. My niece has a flock of sheep, and we have procured the fleeces, and we are hoping to go on a journey to treat these and to use them eventually for stuffing our cushions. So we are going on an optimistic journey.
I shouldn't really say this, but my brother's got a flock of sheep as well. He's only got about 120 in Shropshire, but I'll have a word with him. If you need
Thank
more, you can source them from him as well. But sorry, yeah.
So yeah, we're going on a bit of a journey that people can follow as well, because customers, they want to follow our journey, they want to see what you're doing, and this is going to be completely new for me, so it might work, it might not.
Yeah. Well, it will only work if we really try hard and focus on a positive future. Joe, what have you got to add to the environmental optimism on the stage?
Well, because I live in a scientific protected area and biodiverse part of the North Devon, it's part of the North Devon biosphere. It's kind of a done thing to always think about what impact you're having on your local environment, and you don't want to be seen as the person that moved to North Devon from the big city and polluted it. So you have to always think about how you're running your business, how you're always trying to look for improvements, how you're seeing opportunities where there are opportunities to be had that can improve your product as well. So you mentioned your flock of sheep. There is a byproduct from the wool, that can be used for products that I make, for example. So there are different ways that you can turn. It's not necessarily a negative. It's just looking for opportunities and looking for ways of enhancing and improving and constantly adding to your product range and your business that tells the end consumer you're always thinking of the next thing. But it's things that perhaps we would have done 100 years ago or 200 years ago that maybe we need to start looking at again. That means we don't need to go back to lots of plastic and lots of waste.
Yeah, fully agree on that. Finally, and our final topic, I wanted to remind us all that we're in a buyer environment. I'm not sure if anyone else saw this, but I read a very interesting story last week from Selfridges that have set a target for 2030 that they would like half of their in-store transactions to be green in some way. So reused transactions or recycled transactions or regenerated product or raw materials that are not virgin raw materials. And I wondered if the word circularity in your world is normalizing. It's been a normal word in my world because I deal with manufacturers, and lots of our manufacturers are already going circular. But is the circularity story and the idea of circular transactions with an organization as big and as forward-thinking as Selfridges is, do you think that circularity is becoming the normal that we see as manufacturers? I don't mind who takes that, whoever's seen circularity the most, but is it the new normal, circular relationship with your supplier, where a product might come to the supplier and come back to you ultimately?
I hope so. That's something I've been looking to do. So if people are finished with the products, that they could possibly send them back to us, and then we can recycle them. They could get reused. So definitely something that we're looking at. And with the news with Selfridges, I think it can only be a good thing, because then hopefully there'll be a domino effect, because using sustainable options is expensive. So the product price point is quite high. So by having that as the norm, then hopefully in the industry, people will pay a bit more to have the products that are sustainable, and Selfridges doing that hopefully will have a knock-on effect.
Yeah, I was very optimistic to read that. It's obviously something that they want to tell the world, and they're using it as a competitive advantage. Do you see circularity emerging as the new normal, Joe?
Definitely, because I think with the retailers that I supply at the moment, and also me personally, the way that I've been able to get repeat customers is through recycling and reusing and refilling. So it kind of brings that customer back, and it makes them feel good about what they're doing. It means they can continue that product for much longer than they probably would do with any other kind of product that's very similar. It's good for the end retailer as well, because it brings that customer back through the door. It's not something that it's a one-off purchase and they're gone. To have that relationship, I think, is important, because you can build on that and create more, I guess, opportunities for both you me as a business, the retailer, and the end consumer.
Yeah, it's about footfall, isn't it, Susanne? I mean, I know you sell a lot in the trade space, but I mean, do you think circularity, even in the trade space, it will become, even things that are potential or used to be just given away, and never seen again? Do you think product will start to come back even to the people that made them?
I think that in the past, manufacturers have been very invisible. We've been kept secret, like as though these products suddenly just came out of the earth and there they are to either be given away or bought or whatever. And the manufacturer is a secret squirrel somewhere, as though notebooks grow on trees. They don't. Someone makes them. And it's only by having the visibility that the product could ever get back to me. I think as small gift shops, retailers, Selfridges, whoever you are, if you're using that green space and that circular economy as a come back and get a refill, be it a notebook for a notebook jacket or a diffuser that you can refill, or to give something back, then you're bringing those clients back to your store. You're keeping that relationship open. And I think one of the biggest marketing secrets is that it's much easier to keep hold of a client that you've already attracted than it is to attract a new client. So if Selfridges are using this as a ruse to get clients back to their store, and that's having a real positive, sustainable story too, then it's a genius piece of marketing as well, isn't it?
I completely agree with you. I think it's really interesting. I mean, Selfridges are very fascinating concept, and I think that the fact they've gone public with that, I think, is quite a master stroke. I'm sure others will follow as well. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for our questions. I hope that you've all learned something. I've certainly learned something. You'll have definitely learned what meaningful packaging is. If anyone does have any questions for our panelists about their products or about British manufacturing, then they can ask them now in person, or you can approach our speakers afterwards. If you do have a question, you can put your hand up, and I think we've got a roving microphone. So don't be shy. Ask us anything, as long as it's about British manufacturing and made in Britain. Do we have any? Would you like to ask a question? Yeah, you just hand the microphone. Yeah, just do you want to tell us who you are and?
Sure. My name is Andrea, and I'm working for a startup, a gift company.
Okay.
But we're looking to make sure that every part of our supply chain is as low impact as possible.
So you're here to learn.
It's going to be
Yeah, that's
impossible
good.
to be zero, but as zero as we can. It's just that a lot of the suppliers are global for what we kind of want in terms of like upcycled materials and like recycled fibers mainly. And it's just almost like that the industry maybe in the UK isn't as developed with regarding to like repurposing waste.
Yeah.
Or is that not the case? Perhaps are there a lot of?
I think I can help you. Certainly, I can try to. Made in Britain is a database as well. So we have an identity system for members that they all use the Made in Britain mark, and they use it on their packaging and on their business identity. But we also have an enormous database of pretty much everything you would want to know about SME and larger manufacturers in this country. So if you visit madeinbritain.org and then click on either the news tab or the members tab or the product tab, you can actually, all the searches are interrelated. So for example, if you were looking for upcycled fiber, you can type that into any of the searches and it will reveal our members that are using that already, or it'll give you a search on where you're most likely to find a company that can manufacture or supply you with that. The other thing I'd say is that we have a news feed. So all of our members send their news to Made in Britain, and we publish all of their news about British manufacturing and the growth of British manufacturing, and we publish that in a public space. So it's all good news. There's no controversial news there. It's all good news about the growth of manufacturing. And again, if you type in your search criteria into that news feed, you'll find a business in Britain that you can phone up with a UK phone number, and you'll speak to somebody, a real person that can lead you. And the other thing I'd say is that even for non-members, members of Made in Britain are extremely helpful. So it doesn't matter that you're not a member of the organisation, they will help you and try and connect you with the right person, because we all want the same thing, which is more responsible local manufacturing in this country, and that's something that we would all support. Any other questions from anyone? Don't be shy. Put your hand up if there's something. Yeah, we've got a question over in the corner. Just let us know your name and who you're working for.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Alex Miller. I'm from the National Trust for Scotland, and it's more an observation. I really enjoyed the session, by the way, so thank you to the speakers. What I've noticed, the pandemic took so much away from us, but what we've noticed, particularly in the last year, is the significant shift within heritage to move to a much more recycled process. There's a definite shift in that. The ACE conference earlier this year, Association of Cultural Enterprises, all the tourist sites, most of them represented from the UK, sustainability and recycling was the top of the agenda from there. And we ourselves have reassessed our whole range. And we've introduced things like Meet the Maker. So as part of the interpretation, as part of the visitor experience, if you like, we're actually talking about our suppliers as well, and also the origin of some of the products, but there's been a definite shift. So with all the speakers, all what you were saying really resonated with me. So it's not a question, it's just an observation and a thanks.
That's really, really good to hear. And and we would support all of that, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes, gentleman in the middle.
Thanks very much. Ben Delaney, I'm from a law firm called Owen Mitchell, and we've got a lot of clients in the manufacturing and retail space, and a lot of them are talking to us about accreditations, how to prove in almost a legal or scientific way that they are sustainable or net zero or carbon neutral. Has the panel given any thought to pursuing particular accreditations for their products that would give them rigor? Because clearly you can say you're sustainable.
Are you thinking specifically of a green accreditation?
A green accreditation,
yeah.
or within the wider ESG debate, you can have accreditations that point to particular things. And I just wondered if you'd given thought to B Corp status or any of the others you see on...
Or the ISO 14001, yeah.
That sort of
those,
thing, yeah. There's millions of them out there, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you had particular favourites or...
Well, a Made in Britain is one of them, but obviously our accreditation is around where the company is and what they're making. But yeah, don't mind who takes that. Any other accreditations?
We started our journey with our ISO 9001 and 14001. If anyone doesn't know, it's kind of like a benchmarking exercise where you're externally audited. And so the 9001 is all about your quality and your systems and how you kind of look after your customers. And the ISO is all about analysing your impacts and then mitigating them. It doesn't go far enough. We've looked at B Corp, and there's another one whose name escapes me right now that I think may be more suited to us. To get that final product level accreditation, on my other hat, we do a lot of business gifts, and the British Promotional Gift Association, the BPMA, have looked at how they could, as an association, accredit. So much as Made in Britain make sure that I actually make my product in Britain, they were trying to look at the greenwashing that goes on. And I think this is really important. You cannot take at surface level any claim that something is green. There needs to be a little bit more probing. And there isn't just a one-size-fits-all accreditation out there that I could submit my product and say, right, these are the components within my product, and this is where I make it, and therefore this is what makes it green. Partly because green means, or sustainable means so much more to everyone. You've got to pin down what sustainability means to the buyer, for example, if that's who you're trying to prove it to. I often have to send what my components of my product is, why I believe it's sustainable. But I do hope that soon there will be an easier route to accreditation, because I'm not sure how many of you kind of get involved in any accreditation. It is incredibly expensive. So REACH is a chemical basis accreditation across Europe that you have to kind of basically state that the components of your product do not cause any damage to anyone. One REACH test on one area of your product is about £1,000. If you have, say you have 50 materials of your base, then you've got like any other components like ribbons, the elastics. You can imagine what cost load that then puts on what you're buying. So it's trying to find a way that we can all accredit and stop the greenwashing, and yet not make all of your products so expensive. And the danger is that if you buy something that someone says is green and it's not, nobody wants to be in that space either. So the due diligence.
Your business has completed the Made in Britain Green Growth
Yes.
assessment. How did you find that? That's free to members, obviously,
Yeah.
but did you find that onerous, or did that help you sort of isolate where your journey will be heading next, for example?
I think you always think you know where you are, and then you do the assessment and you get a percentage. You think, oh my God, there's still a long way to go. So I think it doesn't matter how much you think you're doing, there's still a lot more you can do. Trying to find a way to prove to everyone that what you're doing is good and great will be the difficulty. It's a bit like the whole low-fat phenomena, isn't it? The whole diet market.
Well, the other thing I'd say, and this is to sort of defend the 1,900 members of Made in Britain, because it's harder for manufacturers. I mean, I think, I'm sure that I could get all of my panelists to confirm that being a successful manufacturer going green is harder than if you're an insurance business going green. You know, the manufacturers all have the resource scarcity problem, which is, to make something and sell it, you've got to find raw materials, you need energy. We know that's all, the price of energy is going through the roof. And you need people and you need premises. And those aren't requirements for all the other sectors, business sectors. So we, Made in Britain, put a lot of effort into trying to help our manufacturers identify what their green growth status is, if you like, and where they can easily address certain issues that are affordably changeable to make their business even greener and to demonstrate that to their customers. Joe, you want to say something?
So for me, I don't have the financial backing to go through those sort of processes, and also it's a bit of a minefield, really, because when you start looking around at all these different accreditations, then you're thinking, well, which direction should I be going in? What's the process? It's having the time to do it. It's having the headspace to sit down and do it. And you think, maybe that's a weekend job or an evening job, but then, things don't really work out that way. But also, I spoke to another member of Made in Britain who produces this packaging for me, EcoCraft, and I spoke to him about how do I prove, or what can I do to prove that I'm green enough? And when I explained how I put my packaging together, how I put my products together, how I reuse certain things, and how I try and explain that to the end customer, and so on and so forth, he said, well, you're doing all the right things, so it's very easy to beat yourself up about all the things you're not doing, but also try and remember the things that you are doing, and that you are trying to do what you can to be a greener business. It's just not as easy as it may sound to just kind of tick some boxes and then say you've got your little certificate.
And it has to be affordable, doesn't it? Any solution that you put, we all want to run profitable businesses that are, that's succeeding in the long term, not just sort of lost in this maze of green wash. Any more questions from any of our audience? Well, in that case, all that remains for me to do is to thank you very much for coming along and for listening and learning with us. I hope you've all learned something. Thank you very much to all of our panelists from Made in Britain. And I wish you a successful next 2 days of the Autumn Fair. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.